meeting, depending how it goes, I would hope it might be finished by about 7. We then go into a workshop, which I'll be looking to you to tell us when you might want that to wrap. We're thinking around about 8:15, that type of thing, if you can stay with us that long. I do remember going to see Ken Dodd once, and that was a tremendous experience. Early on, he shouted to the audience, "What time do you want to go home?" And somebody said, 2 o'clock in the morning. And he said, "Why do you want to go during the evening?" And it was what I would call a hostage situation. But we're not going to be like that this evening, hopefully. So, without further ado, we have apologies from Helen Taylor, and we have Tricia Brown, Tina Mackenzie Boyle on the screen. Any other apologies?
Councillor McElroy will be on the screen.
Councillor McElroy is drawing on the screen. And Councillor? Oh, yes, okay. I'm also expecting Councillor Murner. It looks like we might be Declaration of interest, members. Do we have any to declare? Okay. And the minutes of the meeting held on 9th of July, page 16. And I will take matters arising as well. I think there's one item. Let me just take that item. I think on page 12, the annual report, Paul Bremel thanked the authority for their continued support. He will include additional clarity in future recordings of data. So that's for the future, Paul. That one is therefore agreed. Could I have a proposer for acceptance of the minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. And perhaps a second. Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour of accepting these minutes, please. You don't have to vote if you weren't there, but I need enough hands to show that we can carry on. Grateful to you. Any against? And any abstentions? Okay. So, we have 2 reasons. One will be a noted item, and the Deputy, Mark Hartwell, is waiting to use the lectern to take us through the presentation. But before that, we do have appointments committees, lead member vacancy and budget working party. Quite a lot of these. Say to you, Monetary Officer. We appoint nominations received from the group leaders onto the Audit and Governance Committee and Management Committee, table 5, on page 19, I think. The ungrouped Councillor McElroy onto the Management Committee, in table 5. Got quite a few extras here. Appoint one ungrouped member, Councillor Hamid Nazir, independent, thank you sir, onto the Audit and Governance Committee. Appoint a Liberal Democrat member onto the Budget Working Party to replace Joshua Reynolds, who went off to a dark place. The things they'll do to get out of serving on the foreign. To appoint a finance lead member to replace Joshua Reynolds, and to approve Councillors Dahir and Nazir, basic allowance and backdated. Is that from the festival? So it comes into being from the festival. And that Councillor Blundell's basic allowance is backdated from the 1st of September 2002. Thank you. To note, Councillor Neil Rana stepped down, and thank you, sit down, to the 2 members, Neil Rana and Joshua Reynolds, who both stepped down. Their service. Now, Graham, you want to take these slightly different. We can take a batch out on block, can't we?
Chairman, what I propose is, with the exception of 2.4 and 2.5, which require nominations and seconders, that we take the others on the block, because there's no discretion in essence of the authority to exercise. So if members are in agreement with the proposals, with the exception of 2.4 and 2.5, we'll vote on those.
Let's do that. So we are asking you to propose, second, and declare vote on 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9. Those are straightforward, I hope and think, and we'll propose them from the chair. Looking for a second. Councillor Glenn, thank you very much indeed. All those in favour of those uncontentious appointments, I believe, and I'm grateful to all of you. No. I'll come back to chair's announcements, and I'm grateful for the energy out there, but I'm in the burn of this one. So if you don't mind. Then 2.4, a proposal for the lead member. So that's a budget working party, a Liberal Democrat member, proposing Councillor Blundell on the chair. I think Councillor Shepherd today will second that. Can I take that one, please? It is a Liberal Democrat member, so I'd rather hope you vote for it, unless you don't like Councillor Blundell. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Now 2.5, appoint finance lead member to replace Joshua Reynolds and approve the special responsibility allowance to be effective on the 1st of September. Can I have a proposal for the finance lead, please? Councillor Jeffrey, thank you very much indeed. You've got to put your hand up and propose me, aren't you? Very much. It's like a well-oiled machine, isn't it? And do I have a second? Thank you very much indeed. Now this actually saves us a special responsibility allowance. That couldn't be that good, really. So I get more work and same pay. How's that much? There you go. So can I have a vote? Are there any other nominations? I'm rushing my fence. Thank you. All those in favour of myself, proposed by Owen Jeffrey, seconded by Reference Shepherd Bay, the finance lead for that coming year. Thank you very much indeed. I think I should now go back to chair's announcements.
Or you can, I mean, you can take them ready, take them ready, get more territory, or...
No, I'm going to read them out. I'm going to read them out. I don't say I'll be as jokey as he. He did go on till about 1:30, from 7:30. I don't think there was even an interval. He sort of sloped off while somebody played the piano, and he came back on the piano. Wonderful. If you like, that's all. Chair's announcements. Firstly, on behalf of Borough Authority, I would like to welcome Councillor George Blundell from Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, and Councillors Mohammed Nazir and Hajinda Gethir from Slough Council. As you know, Councillor Blundell has been appointed to replace Joshua Reynolds, and we say goodbye to Councillor Neil Rana, who has stepped down. Now, to the more important. On Friday the 16th of August, our crews responded to a devastating fire at a house in Priory Avenue. Dennis, you'll know a lot about this, it's in your turn. A large response was sent to the scene, including 2 crews from Newbury Fire Station, the aerial air platform, and crews from Dorset and Wiltshire, and Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Service. So this was a major response. Firefighters found a fire at a 2-storey semi-detached house with a fire on the first floor. One man was located and rescued from the building. However, he sadly passed shortly afterwards as a result of his injuries. On behalf of the Fire Authority, I would like to issue our deepest condolences to the man's friends and family at what is, I'm sure, an extremely difficult time. Following the incident, our production teams have been out in Hungerford offering safe and well visits, which provide valuable safety advice to residents. The local Fire Authority member, Councillor Benningworth, has also helped to arrange for us to give a presentation at the Town Council on the 4th of November, thank you sir, to help us promote safe and well visits to the wider community. Slough apartment block incident. In the early hours of 22nd of August, our crews responded to a fire at Mosaic Apartments in central Slough. And I see you nodding, sir, so you're well aware of this. Many of you will be aware that this involved a high-rise with cladding, and there has been some media interest around it. So we thought it would be useful to share that. On the night of the incident, our crews arrived in under 5 minutes of the first call and made a swift decision to evacuate all the residents to ensure their safety. Due to this rapid and decisive action working in conjunction with Thames Valley Fire Control, To provide advice to residents, we evacuated nearly 300 residents with no casualties reported. The fire was effectively contained, which prevented it from spreading more significantly. At the height of the incident, 12 fire appliances, the aerial ladder platform, and the incident command unit were in attendance. So 2 major fires within 6 days of each other. The fire investigation is underway. I'll examine the way the fire developed and to what extent the cladding contributed to the spread of the fire. From initial findings, we do not believe that the fire was started deliberately. It is a complex investigation which we estimate will take several weeks to complete, and I think we should have an update on the future chair's reporting, please. As a service, our teams continue to robustly engage with the person responsible for the building to ensure appropriate fire safety measures are in place for those remaining in their homes. Because clearly it can still be used. This has included supporting them to implement additional fire safety measures, such as providing extra staff to continue to patrol the building, and a change in the evacuation strategy to simultaneous evacuation. These additional fire safety measures will remain in place until remediation works are complete. Additionally, our teams have gone out again offering fire safety advice to those who remain in their homes, and we will return once again once the police directly by the fire have returned home. People directly affected by the fire have returned home. We are continuing to work with Slough Borough Council to support the safe return of residents to their property. As with all incidents, it remains a priority to ensure that we continue to identify appropriate learning and implement this across the service. To support this, we have been carrying out an assurance exercise internally. There are also debriefs planned, including our internal operational one and a multi-agency debrief through the local resilience forum. Safety of residents remains of paramount importance to us. We will continue to keep members updated in relation to this lesson. Grenfell Phase 2 report, we're aware of that coming out in recent days. It came out on the 4th of September 2024. 72 people who lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire are at the forefront of our minds, and our thoughts are with their families and loved ones, and all those who continue to be affected by this tragedy. As a service, we will need to take time to consider and understand the report in full, and each of the recommendations, and give them our full consideration, and share an update with the Fire Authority as appropriate in due course. English Veterans Awards. We're delighted and humbled to have been shortlisted as a finalist in the English Veterans Awards in the Employer of the Year category. So well done, all staff. Fantastic recognition of our efforts to create established pathways for transition from the armed forces to the fire and rescue service. We're proud to support those who serve and who have served and their families. The winner will be announced at an award ceremony taking place at De Vere, Wokefield Estate near Reading on the 23rd of October. Ultra Marathon Challenge for the Firefighters Charity. A number of members will, I'm sure, volunteer this evening, or perhaps not. Mark Upwell, our Deputy Fire Officer, has recently completed a gruelling challenge to raise money for the Firefighters Charity. He has run 3 ultra marathons, totaling more than 250 kilometres, which he completed earlier this year. An ultra marathon is run longer than a typical marathon, but in Mark's case, he ran 58 kilometres, 106 kilometres, and 115 kilometres. 279 kilometres in 3 different races. And he ended up 279 kilometres away from home. No, I'm teasing. He's still running, absolutely. 2 Mark's runs were on Serpent Trail in West Sussex, and the other was up in the Scottish Highlands. To date, more than £1,300 has been raised for the charity, and there's still time to donate. For those of you not familiar with the Firefighters Charity, it provides a fantastic range of services to support the fire and rescue service community. I'm sure members will congratulate Mark on a fantastic achievement, and we will share a link to Mark's fundraising page should you wish to donate, and I think a round of applause in the neck. Effective business continuity arrangements implemented in Thames Valley Fire Control Service. Last night, TVFCS experienced issues receiving 999 emergency calls. This is hot off the press, this one. This was due to a national outage on one of BT's systems, which affected a number of emergency services. In light of this, the team worked incredibly quickly and effectively to implement our business continuity arrangements, whilst 999 calls were routed to Staffordshire and West Midlands Fire Control in line with our contingency arrangements, business continuity plan. Thanks to the quick and decisive action taken, business as usual resumed in TBLCS within 25 minutes of the initial reported issue. Thank you to Red Watch for remaining so calm under pressure, to Station Manager Laura Clark and Group Manager Simon Harris for their quick response, and Deputy Chief Fire Officer Mark Arkwell, that name again, that man again. It's your evening, Mark, it seems, for his prompt support provided. This highlighted how effectively our arrangements were put in place to continue to provide a seamless 999 service to our communities across the Thames Valley, despite the challenges faced. Now, members, I'm sure that the service will be offering new members to go and look at the fire control as part of your induction and orientation into the service, and you'll find it fascinating, enjoyable, reassuring, the level of resilience, the level of discipline, the level of process, and the general duty that your firefighters and the support staff and Thames Valley Control put in every day. Thank you very much, folks. Now, I'm back to the main agenda. I didn't get raised of interest. I didn't do petitions, did I? Questions from the public under Standing Orders 19 and 25. And note the minutes. See, I need your help. I'm all over the place.
No decisions, Chair.
Thank you very much.
You've done your announcements.
No more announcements?
No issues arising from the Board of Governors Committee.
Very good, thank you.
No questions from members under Standing Order 30. No notices of motion under Standing Order 44. No recommendations from committees.
Item 11, thank you very much. This was a report you did receive very, very recently. But I have to say, although I think I was a little bit terse with Mark last night, I came in late and I happened to be up. I know, sir, that you have done a lot of work on that with your staff, Katie, over the last 24 hours, almost refreshing and reshaping the whole report. And reasons for that will become clear during the next debate. So I think what I'm looking for here is Mark to introduce. I believe you have a presentation, you can see it ready. Then I'll be looking perhaps to the leaders to...
Sorry, we can't hear you.
I don't, okay. They're all gone, they're all off. That one's on. We've got one on, we press that one on this one. Could somebody put something in the chat to tell the people at home we've got some issues?
Mackenzie Boyle.
As if I wasn't...
Can you hear me now?
As if I wasn't bamboozled enough. Can anybody hear me now through the speaker system? And therefore that is working. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, Councillor Brown, can you now hear the room? Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you.
Let's hope this stays on.
May I just very quickly interrupt and give my congratulations?
Councillor Brown, yes?
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. Mark, congratulations on what you've done. But can I ask you to take just for a while, leave out in Mark Twain's book, even the jet it find out till he goes on.
Tricia, we didn't hear that very well indeed because the volume in the room is pretty low.
Actually, it was Tina Mackenzie Boyle who
I
spoke.
beg your pardon, Tina.
It's don't worry about it. Perhaps I'll just reiterate, just to say, I congratulate Mark on his endeavours and what he's done is amazing. But would he please take a leaf out of Mark Twain's book in future, or the very near future? Can you lie down till this energy wears off? You're very precious. We need you, sir.
Very good, thank you.
Adding this, he's recovered.
So, Mark, you're going to introduce this item. Members, you should be aware this is a noted item, it's not one we're going to vote on this evening. So do you, Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair, and also thank you for the kind words and congratulations, and for the opportunity to plug that the sponsorship link is still live, and it is a fantastic charity. So, yeah, well, look, Paul Bremble and the CRMP team have done the heavy lifting on this work, so I really want recognition to go towards that team, I have to say. I and others have been more involved more recently because of the interest from the representative bodies and my particular role in that relationship. But as I said, the hard work and the heavy lifting done by the CRMP team. However, it was my entire fault that the paper was very, very late, so sincere apologies for that. And that is why, that is why, you've got me talking to you via a presentation, because I do appreciate that it is a rather complex issue and one of operational policy complexity. There's lots of fire service jargon in there, so I thought I would walk you through a presentation, and you should also have two documents in front of you, particularly for new members. I do appreciate this is in at the deep end, so to speak. So you should have in front of you a. Can I see if that works? Let's try it. You should have two documents. One is a glossary of terms, effectively, and the other is two images. One is, and they will become apparent actually in due course. So, onwards and upwards, and let's see if the technology on the clicker is now helping. It is, wonderful. So, a bit of background, and again, apologies if you know this, but I am very conscious that we have a relatively new fire authority members in the room. So, what is your role in P6 and this conversation? So, to be fair, you have duties of the Fire Authority under the Fire Service Act 2004, and you must secure the provision of personnel, services and equipment that efficiently meet all normal requirements. It is in red for a good reason, which will become apparent in a short while. On from there, you have a national framework that requires you to allocate resources for the mitigation of risks and how you choose to deploy these. And in terms of how we write that down, or how you write that down, this is your community risk management plan that you consciously consider, goes through public consultation, and then effectively supports and describes the risk as we see it within Berkshire and how we're going to deploy our resources to mitigate those risks. The current iteration of that is the one on the screen, 23 to 27, which from memory was approved by the Fire Authority in April 2023 after public consultation. So that is the role. Now this document you will see at figure 1. It's effectively a map taken straight out of our CRMP, and purely it describes the disposition of our response assets, those being 14 whole-time fire engines, 5 on-call fire engines, and they are distributed across 16 fire stations. And really important to make sure that members are clear that we aren't changing that. That is staying. And in fact, the CRMP and the Priority 6 that I will talk about shortly really does commit and shows the commitment of the authority to retain that level. Which from memory was a key aspect that the authority wanted put in after that consultation to be really clear with the public. So there is no threat to that. And there are a few words in there, so apologies. And I'm having to listen to myself, so if I get distracted easily, it's because I'm listening to me. So we will ensure our service delivery model is resourced as efficiently as possible to meet fluctuating levels of demand to provide a resilient service. We want to continue to deliver good value for money and to provide our services as efficiently as possible. We will aim to crew all 19 of our frontline appliances whenever possible to maximise our resilience. As a baseline service provision, we will provide a minimum service of 14 frontline fire appliances, and that is directly out of the current CRMP. There's a few elements that will be really clear shortly about why that statement is important. And now this has died in time. I'm not having much luck today. I don't think it's the mics. Hello? Councillors online, can you hear me?
No, they won't be able to.
Okay. Do you want me to carry on without the mic? I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah.
Will it work here? They're all attending.
They're on the other side. Make sure.
All right, if I'm going to turn on the CD mics and off these mics and see if that works.
Testing. Testing.
Team's not doing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And apologies. So, what's really important is, I think, for this conversation, is to describe why we have a baseline provision of 14 fire engines and a total aspiration of having all 19 fire engines available. So, apologies for the data, but it's really important that the information that you have is backed up by accurate, checked information and data sources. So this first chart effectively describes our utilisation, so the amount of times that we use our fire engines. So you will see within here that the actual times that we use it in terms of the I've got a black and white copy of this particular slide, so that's not helpful. But effectively, the green line there is the average number of fire engines that we are using, and so quite low in terms of what our lowest point in the night time, and then going above 2 in the early evening, and slightly higher during the day. The line above that is the red line, and I don't mind admitting that it took the data analyst at least twice to describe exactly how this number is created. But in essence, what it means is that describes the 97.5% of occasions. So across that 6-year period, that is the average highest amount of times that fire engine is used at those times of day. So it ranges from just below 4 in the evening, in the night time I should say, up to, I think it's 7.5, let's say, or sorry, 6.5, so let's round it up to 7. The next slide is, sorry, no, let me finish that one. So the top line on there, the kind of spiky mountain, is the highest number, the occasion of the highest number of appliances used. So on occasion, so the highest peak there is 19. Now, over 6 years, what that means is on at least one occasion, and on some of these it was only one occasion, that was the number of appliances that were required in Berkshire in 6 years. Now, the next slide is referenced in figure 2 on your handout. And the reason this is important is because we've got to differentiate between foreseeable risk But what is normal? Back to that element on slide 1. So again, on this slide, you can see that the average, so the fire engine availability goes up at night, and it's due to the increased on-call fire engine availability. So you'll see about 5 o'clock or so, generally speaking, people finish their day job, they book onto the on-call unit, and you'll see that rise. And you'll see a downshift around about sort of 5 o'clock in the morning, where people are getting ready to go to work and they don't want to be disturbed. So in summary, we have more fire engines on at night than we do during the day. And conversely, the number of times we use a fire engine, which is effectively the number of incidents, is higher during the day and goes down from about midnight to 7 o'clock is the lowest period. So in essence, we have more fire engines on at night and we have less demand during that same period. What is important to note is the dotted line, I believe, from memory. So the dotted line is the upper normal range for pumps in use over a 6-year period. So again, that demonstrates the actual reasonable level of use for our fire engines. And again, that data shows that in this instance, over the 6-year period from March 2022, that heightened average peaked at around about 7. What you can see is the gulf between the actual heightened use of fire engines on 97.5% of occasions and the availability of our fire engines. There is a significant difference. We have a baseline provision of 14. On average, over that 6-year period, we maintain above that. There are occasions where we drop below that, but that is the data that supports the average over that period. So the question is really, what is the difference between normal and beyond normal? And if 97.5% of occasions at its peak, predominantly during the day period, is at 7, and we're maintaining a number at 14, then you can see where the jump is there and why we have that many fire engines. Or the fact that we have sufficient fire engines, I should say, in terms of the utilisation. Now the reason that we have that level of fire engine is because not only is it the weight of attack, so the number of appliances that we have, but it's also the ability and requirement to make sure that they get to the incidents quickly enough. So it's important we have them strategically placed, depending on the risk in the county, so that speed of attack is appropriate, and that's what drives the response standard of achieving, getting to incidents within 10 minutes on 75% of occasions. So I am going to quickly pause there because I've not done a great job in articulating a relatively straightforward approach, but I think it's just really important to understand how many fire engines we believe we need and have and will continue to operate on. So just for clarification, are there any questions at that point?
Members, you have had a submission from the Fire Brigades Union, and therefore you're aware that the FBU has some concerns that they've articulated. This is to make sure you feel you have the knowledge, not to vote on this, but to continue to support CRMP, which voted on last year. This CRMP 6 could, perhaps should, have been implemented in April of this year. Members, myself, the Vice Chair, Councillor Mackenzie Brown, have given several extra weeks, months for the FBU to make representation to us. There is a FBU liaison group, firefighters liaison group. We meet with them regularly. We met with them Tuesday of this week. We must have met and discussed this with them 3, possibly 4 times when they've made representation. Having challenged the chief, the deputy, assistant chief fire officer, we are confident, as your lead members, that this is something we should continue. So I'm not asking for your votes, I'm making sure you feel you have the information, and now is the opportunity to question the officers, particularly Mark. And back to you, sir.
Fantastic. Okay, I will now move on to P6. So that sets the foundation of the conversation, I believe. So you'll be familiar with P6, I hope. It is clear in the CRMP. That, again, is a direct lift from the CRMP. And it talks about and confirms we will maintain 19 frontline fire appliances and a baseline service provision of 14 frontline fire appliances, utilising whole-time and on-call staff, and that is the key change, as effectively as possible through local management. The CRMP then goes on to clarify under P6 that we'll continue to maintain our response standard, and we recognise that we are entrusted with public money and have a duty to spend it wisely in order to ensure we provide our services efficiently. We will seek to ensure that we deliver good value for money. So that is quite clear, I believe, in the CRMP under P6. So why do we need to do P6, or why do we want to do P6? And there are a number of reasons. So first of all, it's important that we align our resource to evidence-based risk, and hopefully I've given you a very kind of brief top layer of a summary version of that evidence in the previous slides. We need to improve the resilience and reliability of our baseline response model. So those 14 fire engines that we're absolutely adamant we want on the run as often as we can and as many as we can. We've got to make sure, the authority should make sure, that it is not over-reliant on voluntary overtime, because we've got to make sure we have a reliable and resilient core, and that's why we must protect that minimum baseline of fire engines. So just to be clear, this is not about direct savings, although I will talk about the finances. The reason that we talk about the potential reduction in overtime is A, because the overtime bill has increased significantly over a reasonably short period. I think it goes from something like just under 700,000, and we're kind of currently plugging at around 1.4 in terms of actual predicted spend. I think the budget is about 1.2, but either way, it's a huge shift, and we are becoming over-reliant on that use of overtime. So we predict, and it's in your efficiency plan, around about £150,000 worth of savings in the revenue budget as a result of this or these types of changes. And that money, and I'm not sure whether it's explicit or not, but that money in the discussions around the budget is to support the additional frontline firefighter roles. So the service, the authority, has invested in 10 additional firefighter roles to support that resilience and reliability of our fire engine provision. So we are not taking the money, there's no pressure from government or elsewhere to find that saving. It's about making sure we're aligning our resources to where it has the greatest effect to the public, frankly. We need to protect the speed of response. We talked earlier, speed of response is a factor. It is a factor. I will talk about the potential impact on speed of response, and I hopefully will be able to give you some or a heightened degree of confidence that the impact will be negligible. We need to and should do, we talk regularly about the challenges that we have in retaining our on-call colleagues. again, that provide that level of resilience and those number of fire engines available for us to deploy to emergencies. And what they're telling us is that actually they want to be included in that modelling. They want to be included as part of the core response model. And we believe that this change will, in many cases, support that recognition of value, which may, and I don't want to overplay this, but it may help in terms of our culture and also potentially the retention of those staff as well. We've also got to be really careful that we don't try and take too many hours out of our people. We are our own worst enemies in terms of working incredibly hard. So it's a nice problem to have in some respects, but we have to make sure that we safeguard our people's health from a physical health and a mental health perspective. There are a number of other complicating factors around limitations that are set nationally. I won't go into them in the conversation, but there are a number of other factors that we must make sure that pre-arranged overtime use, or keeping fire engines on the run, is managed appropriately. So, how do we actually operationalise P6? Well, frankly, it's a relatively small change, or a couple of changes, into an operational policy. So we call that the Operational Resource Management Policy, ORMP, in your papers, I believe. And effectively what it's saying is that we will not pay pre-arranged overtime to crew above 13 whole-time appliances on occasions when the following apply. We already have 14 fire engines or more in Berkshire, and that would mean that at least a minimum of one on-call unit would be available. And we know, and we have a great level of confidence in that number. It will only apply if it's a night shift when the average incident rates per hour are lower, and I've described that kind of graph in terms of where that demand peaks and flows. But we have fewer incidents at night, and we have more fire engines on at night. So it doesn't make sense in terms of resource following risk. There is no known or foreseeable increase in risk profiles as determined by local managers. I think it's in the paper in terms of a detailed description of what that actually says, but in essence, we want and have allowed and been really clear in terms of the policy change that our staff at the very junior ranks, so the lowest level of decision making in terms of managers on a fire station, can determine if their risk profile is unusually high. So for example, we have flood warnings, flood alerts in place. We have something called a fire severity index, a wildfire fire severity index. If it's been really hot, for example, that will go up and the risk of wildfires increases. Or there might be other aspects, and we've intentionally not been too specific about that because we want local managers to make professional risk-based decisions and start using the resources appropriately. So effectively, they can choose to, providing it's appropriate, they can choose if they deem the risks to be too high for a number of reasons, they can choose to still pay that overtime for that 14th whole-time fire engine. We did have to go back to the policy and make that a lot more explicit, and that was by request of our FBU colleagues. And we've also revised our degradation plans to ensure that no whole-time fire station should be left without at least one fire engine at night as a result of P6. So a degradation plan is when we realise that we haven't got enough crew, and in this instance it's 58 people, so 58 operational people. If it goes below that, sometimes we have to take a fire engine off the run. And we don't do that randomly. We make sure that we're considering the impact on the communities in terms of generally speed of response and impact on that response model. We have strengthened the guidance on that so that colleagues locally are much more conscious of the impact on that response standard, and therefore we believe that actually, whilst I've quoted in the paper that there's a theoretical increase to the response standard, decrease to the response standard performance of 0.6, that is a theoretical amount, and perhaps we'll talk about that later. But that's a really key change. I'm aware that there is some concern that particularly those stations that are clarified in our sort of top 4 fire stations to consider in our degradation plan, those being Ascot, Slough, Ascot, Wokingham Road in Reading, and someone's going to have to help me out. Windsor, thank you very much. And so those are the 4 stations where it would have least impact on our response standard, but they're not deemed in hierarchical order, if that makes sense, for a number of reasons that don't apply anymore. And so we're strengthening our guidance to protect that position. I'm sure members may have a question on that, so I'll go into more detail if required at that point. So what are the risks of P6? Well, I just wanted to articulate the response standard impact. So at the moment, our 5-year average is 75.3, and that's compared to our actual response standard target, if you like, which is 75% of occasions. Now, we've also been really clear to show that 2021 we were above that, 22 we were below that, and again 23 we were also below that. So we do know it's a stretch target, and we're working really hard to make sure that we've got enough fire engines on the run all the time, or as often as we possibly can, because that we do know is a factor in terms of our ability to respond quickly. There are also a whole host of other factors, and this is really important to take note of. There are so many factors that impact our speed of response. So, for example, in 2022, the summer of 2022 was one of the busiest periods we had, which is a really good indication, and there's some very good data that shows we were just so busy. There's so many incidents, and of course, the more incidents you have, the longer it will take to get the nearest, quickest appliance to it. So it can be skewed quite heavily. Similarly, if the weather is awful, there's icy roads, we have a very bad winter, there's flooding, then that can also impact. So there are a number of factors that can impact that performance. Savings, we talked about savings, and again, they're savings insofar as we want to reinvest them. In fact, arguably, we've already reinvested that if you think about the 10 firefighters. It is possible that this doesn't work as well as we think it would work, insofar as the savings. And I'll talk about how we're going to monitor that shortly. But it's a risk nonetheless. Industrial relation tensions. I'm aware that many councillors have been contacted by FBU, Fire Brigade Union representatives, and I've actually seen some of the material that's been provided, and that's partly why I've wanted to go at quite some length to talk about the actual data sets that we have. I don't want to go into too much conversation there, but there is a risk of heightened tension with our FBU, and perhaps we'll pick that up through one question if need be. And then lastly, there is an element, and in the paper it talks about the HMI have asked and are watching closely into many FRSs, but they've referenced our situation on 2 occasions now that they've come in, and they really want to know. I suppose the simple question is, back to that resource following risk, we have a lower level of risk at night, we have a higher level of fire engines for the same period. They're asking why. I think it's a reasonable question as to why. Many other services have gone a lot further. So I'll give an example of Surrey Fire and Rescue, a neighbour just over the border, and they've taken a number of decisions to actually significantly reduce and remove fire engines at night. We're not anywhere near that situation, but it is quite common for fire services to do that, particularly when there are other pressures at bay. So next steps, happy to take and very keen to take feedback from yourselves. We anticipate going live with the policy on Monday, and that will be supported by a fairly comprehensive communications campaign, predominantly internally, to make sure that our staff are informed and they have the truth about when they are making decisions. We will do an awful lot of assurance and evaluation around this, more so than perhaps we would ordinarily, and we were pretty good at making sure that we are monitoring and evaluating our changes at the best of times, but we are incredibly aware that there's a heightened focus on this particular change. So for example, we will have the Operational Support and Improvement Team. That's a new team that we put in probably about a year ago, perhaps even more, and actually that's really helping us make sure that the resources, the people that we have are being used much more efficiently. We have the Response Resourcing Group, which is chaired by the Area Manager for Response and Resilience, and that's a standing item on the monthly meeting there. And to note that the FBU have been invited to participate in that meeting, specifically to help us evaluate the impact of the policy changes as a result of P6. Currently on the forward plan is a proposal to bring forward a fire authority evaluation report. At the moment that is scheduled for Q1 25-26 from memory. So we'd be very happy and very keen to bring information back to members as required to describe how this policy changes has been operationalised, the impacts of that, and if we've identified any unintended consequences. Apologies for going on a bit, but it is a really important and again quite complex area, so it's difficult to gauge it at the right level. But that is me, clearly very happy to take any questions.
Members, thank you for listening. That's a very important presentation. Mark has alluded to some FBU disquiet. As I say, you've been contacted. I know the Vice Chair wants to come in, and others, obviously, wherever you'd like to. Shall I start with you, Vice Chair?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, I need to press my button. I'll leave it on if it's... Yes. I mean, obviously, quite famous to ask questions, but I'm happy to make my remarks now and my suggestions. But if people, members can see, obviously new members, that my name is on the report, as well as being Vice Chair and leader of the Labour Group. I, like Jeff, I did 2 jobs for the price of 1 and took on the CRMP lead, which, and you know, I was proud to do that because it's a very, very important document, because it sets the trend of the delivery of the service over a number of years, and it's essential that we get it right. And my recollection of the meeting back in April 2024, some of you may have been there, was it was a very testing meeting, and members actually, also recollection, strengthened the wording, you know, changing words from should to will, and also I think using the word effective, to make sure, you know, to make sure that it was tight, and that what we were saying in the CRMP about maintaining, where possible 19, but as a minimum 14 appliances on the run was kept to, and also in other parts of the document, other assurances. It was a long night. I think it's longer than we're going to be tonight. I'm going to say this because it's a public meeting, but as Vice Chair of the Authority, as the leader for CRMP, but more importantly, as a Labour Group member, there is actually no way that I would in any way support what I saw as any degradation of service whatsoever. And clearly we have been in discussions with the FBU on a number of occasions, in fact recently this week, and we want to work with them, work with the local officials and obviously the regional officials on this, and hopefully they can eventually find the level of reassurance that they require. The members will have received an email today from them underlining a number of points, which I think Mark Artwell has addressed many of those, and I have to say that the charts are quite illuminating in terms of the demand at night. And I'm going to say this now, I wouldn't particularly myself want to go down the Surrey model, because I think obviously clearly their budget situation, whatever pressures was worse than ours. But a lot of these changes, let's be honest, I'm going to say this, there have been a number of pressures on Budget Council and Fire Authority budgets over 14 years. As a Labour member, we only know that too well. But a lot of these decisions are driven by budget. But actually, this particular set of decisions, the CRMP, I think generally was around the more effective use of resources, and also trying to cut what is heading to be £1.4 million of overtime budget. And also, as I understand it, in certain aspects was breaching certain of the rules that exist about overtime. And we may want to clarify that, because there are rules under the Green and Grey books about the amount of overtime you can do and whether you exceed it. So in this case, as I understand it, and because of current practices, that happens. So we do need to make. We do need to change that, and to be fair to the FBU, actually in the meetings we've had, they've recognised that as well. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get rid of overtime completely. I don't actually think that will necessarily be healthy, but obviously we do need to reduce it. And on the budget model that we did last year, reducing the overtime, there is a sort of causal link, enabled us, as the Chair will probably may want to mention in his remarks, to take on a commitment for 10 extra firefighters to be added to the establishment, actually pushing the establishment up. And speaking again, as we go into that budget round again, I'll be hoping for us to keep on with that trend. Clearly there's a retention issue at the other end as well, but we want to have a high level of establishment on the authority. And one of the discussions I'll be having with newly elected Labour and Lib Dem MPs is that we need to have the funding so we can have a bigger establishments and also provide a better service people of Berkshire. But notwithstanding that, I would stand by Priority 6 as something that's going to run and it will be valid for the time of the CRMP. But it is complex and it is contentious, and I do have sympathy with. I think there's been 10 new members since we moved to April 2024. Faithfully kindly gave us. So this is difficult, and that's probably why people are elected as elected members. We do this on our local authorities. And now it's quite unusual actually in the fire authority. This is a difficult, contentious issue, and we have to deal with it. So I suppose I want us to proceed. I think we must proceed because the policy decision was taken, and I think now is the time to try and implement this. The one thing about the implementation, and it has been as part of the negotiations, I think a crucial point, is the local management side of this, where local management, who include obviously some FBU officials, if truth be known, and others, can make decisions on the ground if they think there's extra risk deployed. So I think that really is crucial, and I think when we originally came up with this policy, I'm not so certain that was written in. But this is an operational matter, and as we've tried to implement it, this has now become an issue. We want local management to remain in place to give staff the reassurance this will happen. And so hopefully when we start this, that this will work smoothly, not without maybe some reaction to our decision. Because quite frankly tonight we're asked to note the report, but we can't, and I don't think we should change it or change the policy. I would though, through you Chair, like to make an amendment or an addition to this, is that, and Mark has more or less covered this in his report, about reporting, and I think I'd like to tighten that and say to recommend or that we have a Fire Authority members and management have a report back after 3 months. Now, if you do the maths, that takes us nearly to Christmas, but nonetheless, people still report after 3 months, and probably myself and the Chair will probably receive monthly updates in our chats with the Chief. But after 3 months, so we can fully review that and have some feedback, and also at that time, leading into the new year, we will then start to have the budget process as well. And it may be that that's intertwined, it may be not. There also is audit and governance at the end of that month, and then the management committee. It will give us time to digest the figures, get some reaction, and decide, you know, if this is working. I mean, I believe it will, but also I hopefully give reassurance to staff that as far as authority members, we do take their concerns on board. We're not ignoring it. We're not saying, oh, we have a review after 6 months or sometime in the year in quarter of 2025. I'd like to see a degree of urgency to move that forward. And so that's my recommendation. And I will stop speaking now and ask other members to ask some questions, which may also throw up other issues. But that would be my recommendation, that we review this after 3 months, and then we can start to take decisions if we need to based on that. I think personally think this will be okay, but there could be obviously some kickback as we know.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and just to summarise that, within noting the report, we will want it minuted that the Fire Authority will expect a report after this has been in place for 3 months, and that'll come in either the Management Committee or Fire Authority in the new year.
Sorry, Jeff, just to say, it could be circulated to members in the conform by the
Indeed,
online, because it is a
It could, Vice Chair, but also don't forget operational. The Chief and the Deputy Assistant Chief Fire Officer, Deputy Chief Executive, will be looking at this daily. The lens will be on this operationally every day of the week. Therefore, 3 months actually then have the data very, very crisp. So we've got further questions, but I'd like to welcome Councillor Werner. I'd like to welcome Councillor Blundell. Thank you very much for coming, so you're welcome. Any questions? We've got a really good go at this. Councillor Clinton.
Do I take this on or not?
Yes.
No, it's on.
You can,
Oh, it's up.
I'll speak loudly. Well, firstly, as a relatively new member, can I just say I really appreciate the presentation tonight. It was very helpful to make sense of what the report. Secondly, in my previous life as a health economist, I completely understand the need to make difficult decisions about where you put your resources to get the best outcomes. So the use of data and the use of modelling is really reassuring to see how thoroughly you've gone into that. I think Councillor Gittings, I think you've really reiterated what I wanted to say, which was modelling is modelling. So it's all now about gathering the data and making sure we're looking at the data so we know what impact it is having. So appreciate the recommendation for the regular updates. And then this is a teeny tiny point and I can't help myself. The 0.6% impact, did that include the 10 new officers or not? Can't help myself.
So it's a technical question, and someone's going to go to the correct minute. In short, no.
So it might have a little bit of an impact to decrease.
So it's modelling around, yes, so that's, I suppose that's the point. So it's the predicted modelling if a fire engine at a location came off the run. Okay. Now, one would suggest that, and that's kind of fixed, if you like. Now, the difference that the 10 firefighters make, and this is the point, I suppose, the key point about making sure we've got resilience and we've got the number of people and we're not over-reliant on overtime, is the fire engine comes off the run on fewer occasions because we have those 10.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Grateful to you. We've given this a good airing. We're noting it. The monitoring officer always wants a show of hands to note things. But bear in mind also, I think Kayla and Faith have got note of the other recommendation for the 3-month review. Members, I think we ought to now vote to note the item, if you are so disposed. I propose we note it. Mr. Shepherd of Bay will, well, the Vice Chair.
yes, I'd like to.
Thank you. All those in favour of noting the item in the recommendation on the review? Grateful to you all, very, very helpful indeed. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Okay. We then have the full plan on page 33, the landscape figures. Got one, there now. The landscape papers for the upcoming report plan management committee 8th of October. Audit and governance, which will be an audit report 21st of October. Fire authority 13th of November. Can I note those, and I don't think the Lord Council insists that we vote.
I'm just going to ask, Mark alluded to the forward plan includes a review of the operation.
We'll need to update it anyway for the 3 months,
Yeah.
so we'll take that action
You'll
soon.
update that within the board plan. Thank you very much. I'm going to change it, crack on, Alex?
Yep.
Thank you. And then the other one is date of next meeting, is it not?
Well, minutes from standing committees,
Very
but
fine.
note that they will be published.
Indeed. Item number 13, note the minutes of recent meetings and published on the Arden Price website. Date of next meeting is 13th of November 2024. I propose that we close the meeting, take a 5-minute break, reconvene, because there are just a couple of presentations and discussions around other aspects of the service in terms of the, fully the workshop, actually it's an information session. Is that okay, members? Thank you very much indeed.